What's happening to Donald Trump's rating and what to expect from a possible meeting between Trump, Putin, Erdogan, between Trump, Putin, Zelensky. We will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, President Donald Trump has set a historic anti-record for popularity among American voters. Now, only 37% of the country's citizens support him. This is reported in the research materials of the American sociological company Gallup. What influences such a drop in Trump's rating the most? How do you think and how Americans feel?
There's a couple of things that are very interesting about this poll. First of all, it's that we consistently see that President Trump doing his popularity is falling the worst with independent voters because Democrats never liked him, Republicans never seem to have stopped loving him, but it's the independent voters that are kind of giving up and are particularly don't like his methods. They don't like how, even if they like the ideas that he was offering, upon examining his methods, they are very not happy. It's also interesting that when it comes to his handling of the Epstein affair or Epstein case, we see that we see that it's a shift. You know, first of all, speaking these names in Russian and in English, where in Russian he's Epstein and in English he's Epstein. It's like, who am I speaking to? What is the correct pronunciation, appropriate pronunciation of this horrible person in this language? Anyway, trying to distract the attention, we see that all across the board, all Americans are not happy with the amount of information that we received about this case, with President's handling of this case. And that's another, I think, a very revealing finding of this poll and others. But overall, President is historically unpopular. Prior to that, his lowest rating was 34%, which was at the end of his first cadence. But now we see that he is really getting very close to that. It's like he was catching up for time that he missed in terms of all the different reforms that he decided to conduct in the first 6 months. His popularity or lack thereof is also catching up to him. So it seems like not too long before he'll have that 34%, and then who knows. But their reasons are different. Because prior to when he was at 34%, this was, around January 6, 2021, where we see a very clear, news event that happened. What is happening right now is the Epstein case, where he was trying to he was running essentially on several conspiracy theories, because as we are becoming all too aware, the position and the approach of today's Republican Party is not by doing good things for its electorate, but by doing bad things to its opposition. It's actually a repeating of a famous Russian joke, maybe Ukrainian as well, but upon asking different people what is it that they want, their one wish, it turns out that the wish of the Russian person is to have their neighbor's healthy cow dead. It's not that they want something, different things, but they just want the bad things to happen to somebody that they don't like. And I never thought about it in terms of not liking the neighbor. I just thought jealousy, somebody has a cow, I don't have a cow, I could get a cow, but it'd be easier if their cow just died, then they would be miserable. But in this case, we see that there's actual dislike, and this is where, whether it's dislike of pedophilia and the horrible crimes that are being accused of being perpetrated, or whether we're talking about stealing of the elections and the potential for crimes committed there, another conspiracy, favorite conspiracy of the president, we see that when he's having trouble dealing with the Epstein case, it really is not a conspiracy, it's a case, he's trying to distract us by sending out Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and talk to us about Barack Obama and what a traitorous attempt at stealing the elections was in 2016, where she is substituting the fact that Russia was not successful, according to this report, in impacting the elections for the fact that they were found to have been meddling in our elections in the United States. That's kind of a interesting substitution. It's just saying just because the bank heist has failed, that means that there was no attempted bank heist. Those are different things. But that's the world, that's the politics in which we're dealing now. So when we look at meetings between world leaders and anything else, we are now looking at it through the lens of, is President trying to distract us from Epstein case? Because he just shut down, or had his Speaker of the House shut down House of Representatives so that they couldn't vote anymore about anything to do with Epstein, even though they had all these votes on immigration that they were going to be proud of, that they were really excited about. But now they decided not to take those votes because the possibility or the likelihood of voting on something to do with Epstein is far worse. So whether President Trump now goes to China, whether he sells weapons to Ukraine or bombs Iran on behalf of Israel, everything is going, or decides to arrest President Obama. All of this is now going to look as a potentially distraction from Epstein case. And frankly, it's not working because the Epstein case has been the motivating factor for Trump's base for so long. It's the Democrats who are a little bit very much caught off guard, thinking that people care about health insurance and foreign policy, those kinds of things. Turns out that the criminal case is the main thing that, well, I mean, if you think about it, there's some horrible things that are being alleged in there, so we might as well look at it. And as leader of Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, in the House of Representatives said, everything is interconnected. So it's interesting to see how Democrats are jumping on this opportunity, and they're seeing that forget all the other issues. This is the main political issue that gods have given them. And so they are grabbing onto it, and they're riding it all the way to the bank, as the Republican Party is basically splitting in half between people who are supporting the president and people who are supporting his MAGA movement. And right now we're watching this attempt to distract everything by using a convicted felon to potentially say nice things about the president, as if that is likely to satisfy MAGA crowd. Now, they might be satisfied if former President Obama is arrested. Who knows? But we are looking at using some heavy conspiratorial artillery here.
Yuri, what are the benefits which Kremlin can use and to get now from these Epstein files?
I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what leverage they may have. And I think to those who are wondering if blackmail had something to do with why Donald Trump was so nice to Vladimir Putin, and we see that this Epstein case was brought lately into public consciousness by Elon Musk, there's some interesting questions that could be asked about the level of influence that is played there by Kremlin and to what extent they knew anything about this. After all, Epstein was dealing with young women and so-called honey trap situation, which is really what Kremlin is known for. So there's plenty of reasons to think that there could be logical connections in that direction. But at this point, I think the main benefit to Kremlin in all of this is that United States is descending into chaos. And this is what was advertised if Trump was elected, and this is what we're seeing, except that we're seeing that there's a conflict among his base. It's not because, again, his policies are destructive to the future of the country through the increase of national debt or the dangers that we see to our national defense by having Kremlin-friendly people in all sorts of positions of power. No, it's this particular case. The question is, for me, if it's possible to put the fire out, because Trump is doing everything he can to change direction, to make people look somewhere else, and yet this fire keeps on burning. I think that it just makes the United States weaker. It makes United States less interested in dealing with anything else. Ukraine, what? Huh? What are you talking about? Look at the Epstein case. And in fact, the attention on the Epstein case is now truly bipartisan because Democrats are seeing that this stuff works. So now they're using Epstein case on everything. And, we can see where this is going to go. But I think it's important to acknowledge also that in Ukraine, there have been some protests about Ukrainian anti-corruption efforts and to what extent Ukrainian political leadership is involved in snuffing out anti-corruption efforts. And I think it's really important to let people in Ukraine know that the West is judging a lot of Ukraine's ability and interest in being part of the West, Western liberal democracy, is by how Ukraine is dealing with the corruption issue, which has been a question for a long time. So if there's anything that looks like it is really empowering and enabling more corruption and disabling the independence of corruption-fighting departments of the government, it's not only going to be viewed negatively by Ukrainians, and I think it's really important to acknowledge once again heroic Ukrainian people who are out there protesting when they see something going wrong. But it's also being noticed outside of Ukraine. And I think it's really important to get that message to Ukrainian leadership. I think they got it, but I think it was a big mistake on their part because people in the United States who are no friends of Ukraine look at this and say, see, we've been saying that Ukraine is corrupt, that the Ukrainian government is fighting corruption forces, and we see that Ukrainian people are out there protesting because they want peace with Russia. And, President of Ukraine stands in their way and all of their usual stuff. Because you know what? It's already happening. You know who said that? Marjorie Taylor Greene. So although it's the same congresswoman who is now demanding that Donald Trump release all the information about Epstein, and she's also criticizing President for his friendly attitude with artificial intelligence and Elon Musk. So we'll see. I think there's some really interesting possibilities of the circular firing squad, but the resulting chaos is, of course, ultimately benefiting Kremlin.
Yes, I have and had no doubts that Marjorie Taylor Greene used this case in such a way. So, and we were correct in it in such our assessing. But I should notice that all these 3-day protests, they were not connected with Zelensky resignation, or they were not connected with Putin or even with war. It's only our political issues, and that's all. And now we see that our authorities, Zelensky, reacted in correct way, correct form, and now try to search this way to make things correct and connected with law. So
I think it's very important, and I think I can also add to it that it's pretty clear that it's not United States that behind the protests, because we see United States is now against all sorts of involvement with promoting democracy. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore. So if there's any protests anywhere, that's not us. That's not on us.
Yes, it's no a hand of the United States, yes, and even not a hand of Kremlin in such way.
Yes, because I think Donald Trump would be in such trouble in Kremlin if they found out that he was involved. But who knows? I think that everything that can be done there to unfortunately lead to capitulation of Ukraine, to make life for Ukraine harder and make Ukrainian defense of its sovereignty harder is something that's going to be welcomed by, I think, the White House, the White House and Kremlin in particular, which is giving this 40 plus days, how many days we have left. So, kind of thinking about this a little more, the situation is really dangerous. So I think it is important for Ukrainian government not to cause protests that it can avoid.
But we're not going to give up, to surrender, so we still try to surrender Putin. And we see, Yuri, these days that the Telegraph publication writes that the first Patriot from Trump's initiative is arriving in Ukraine. Now we can judge Trump by his actions, or no?
I think that's really good. I think
Yes.
that this is a result of the pressure that was put on President Trump by everyone, including journalists, but also allies, which are very concerned that United States is simply not a country which can be relied on to provide protection, like NATO is supposed to guarantee. And when all the statements that the United States is making is about how it will, see what happens when it happens, and even Project 2025 only suggests that United States defend Europe in case of a nuclear attack, I think it's important for United States to show that it can do something, because otherwise we are losing all credibility, not just on leadership, but even on our ability to fulfill orders. Because this is not leadership, this is a United States becoming a supplier. And if we're going to be a lousy supplier that can't fulfill its obligations, I think all of this is going to push Europe even faster and further, more aggressively towards developing its own weapons and arming itself and solving its own armament issues, because United States cannot be relied upon to provide sufficient amount of armaments and weapons and everything that Europe and Ukraine needs fast enough. Because when we're not even talking about who is paying for this, we're just saying get it done. And we see that the United States is sputtering and is really concerned about the level of our armaments available, especially after for a couple of days we were involved in a war with Iran. Now all of a sudden our shelves are bare and empty, and we need to be doing something about this. I think this is a signal to Europe that the United States left the building, and it's up to Europe to do something on its own and to take care of its own defense needs. So in that sense, Patriot showing up, and at least I think this is, again, example of not just resistance to Donald Trump, but also leadership of allies, leadership of countries that sometimes, in spite of some of the things and behavior that they've seen from Zelensky, are still continuing to support Ukraine because they understand the importance of it. But I feel that if they see that there's protests going on all over Ukraine because people are not supporting their government, that's not through the fault of the people. That's fault of the government. And so I think it's really important that all of this works together, because solidarity and support is based on trust. And if allies lose trust in Ukrainian government, that would be terrible. And right now we see that Europe lost trust in the United States. United States is trying to perhaps maintain, perhaps rebuild its trust with, one Patriot system at a time. But after the statements that our president has made, I think it's going to take a lot more Patriot systems to restore the trust in the United States.
But Yuri, we see that Trump has not left the Euro-Atlantic family.
He has not. I think that it's not necessarily necessary to leave. I think that the setup that Donald Trump seems to be looking for is that he's got a protection racket where all the European countries need the protection from the big evil Russia, any questions. And the only thing, it seems that Donald Trump doesn't really want to help Ukraine much at all. And for Europe, I think is a very clear signal, because it's not only China that's watching to see what's going to happen with Ukraine. It's also Europe. And when Donald Trump is acting in a way that seems like it is irresponsible of fulfilling the national obligations and not fulfill, we already see United States leaving other organizations, UNESCO, World Health Organization. Those are not alliances on the level of NATO. But I think it is an important trend that we also can't ignore. United States is more and more interested in meetings one-on-one. This is where going to Beijing and meeting with Xi Jinping and with Putin is the tops of Trump's wish list, as opposed to, going to another summit of United Nations or NATO or anything else, where he is just one of many, many players. He is looking for opportunities and stages where he can be the only one sitting on the throne. Armchair, whatever. So that's also an important dynamic to understand in this scenario. Plus, we have countries like Hungary that are actively working not to let Ukraine become part of European Union. I think there are advantages to Russia to have countries that are friendly to it be inside NATO versus be outside of it.
Okay, another statement, fresh statement by Donald Trump. He told that didn't rule out the introduction of secondary sanctions against Russia. We are considering the situation, he said, and for some reason it still seems to me that in 39 days he will do it. Why am I wrong?
I think that, first of all, Donald Trump has just shifted the responsibility once again on Putin, which on one hand is absolutely true, because who started this war? Who violated the Budapest Memorandum? It's Putin. So I think on that level, it's important. But on the other hand, if you want to be a leader of the free world, then I think waiting for somebody else is showing that you're not the leader here anymore. And United States is showing really kind of lack of strength, and also showing the general chaos approach. The chaos could have been avoided, for instance, with a sanctions packet that was authored by Senators Graham and Blumenthal. But of course, this administration is opposed to it because they want full control of everything, including sanctions. And if they're not going to have full control, they don't want any of it. But as soon as President Trump said that he's going to be dealing with with Putin himself, that immediately Senate Majority Leader John Thune of, South Dakota, said that he is not going to now this packet of sanctions is dead, basically, because, president's going to be taking responsibility, charge, whatever. And it was really interesting to see Senator Lindsey Graham after that in the White House lobby, Fox News, where he was speaking to President. That's kind of how Fox News works, after his bill was killed. And did he come out and cry? Did he say, oh, poor me, I was going to show China? No, Lindsey Graham came out swinging. He said, now President Trump is going to show you, Mr. Putin, what to expect. I don't think Putin really cares what Mr. Graham says, but it's important for Senator Graham to show to President Trump that he is still an important, relevant member of Congress and Senate, and, good MAGA in good standing, although MAGA and Trump, there seems to be, problems in there. We'll see. Maybe Trump will be running from MAGA pretty soon. But at this point, Lindsey Graham is basically comparing Trump with the famous golfer Scottie Scheffler, who is, first of all, winning. Second of all, is a strategic thinker. Then he is a quiet person and person of faith. Now, which of these is a comparison to Donald Trump? I'm not sure, because it seems like a really bad comparison, but must be not diplomacy, must be like sucking up. And that's what Senator Graham is doing with that speech. And that's the result of the sanctions packet. They're not going anywhere. They weren't really likely to go anywhere in the first place because the numbers were off, just totally crazy. 500%. What is that about? And so we had something to talk about. And now, in the end, it's all coming down to Trump. And Trump really likes Putin. And he really wants to do business with Putin. The only problem is this pesky war in Ukraine. And Trump doesn't care how war ends. He just wants the carnage to stop, as he puts it, so he could start making money. Because Putin said, let's make money. Trump's like, let's make money. And then Putin won't stop the war. So, but Putin is thinking clearly that Trump will wait. And unless age does something with him, Trump will wait because he seems to have no leverage to press on Putin. It is kind of interesting that the connection between Epstein, Trump, and Putin, because the reason that Epstein and Trump had a falling out was over a building, a mansion in Florida that Epstein wanted, showed it to his best friend Trump. Trump liked it, went behind his back, outbid, overbid, and got the mansion. And Epstein was upset, saying he's a con artist, he really doesn't have the money for it. And lo and behold, a few years later, Trump ended up reselling and selling off of that mansion after already the falling out and all the problems that started between him and Epstein. But he couldn't sell the mansion, so he sold it with over a $40 million profit to a Kremlin oligarch. which is part of the reason that there's a lot of suspicion that there's a connection, financial connection between 47th president and Kremlin. And it's interesting because, Epstein played kind of an indirect or maybe more direct part in it. So I think when we talk about connections between these different secret services and these people, it's pretty clear that there's been a lot of dirt and dirty laundry going around, and it's clear that 47th president really has lots of reasons why he would not want any of this to come out.
The calls that change everything. The Telegraph reveals the secret story of one phone call and the chain of events that forced Donald Trump to change course and resume military aid to Ukraine. Among them, one phone call from Poland, according to Telegraph, an attack on the consulate in Kyiv, and pressure from allies. Amid the heavy shelling of Kyiv since the war began, the initiative of General Kislyak and advisor to Donald Trump marked the beginning of a dramatic U-turn in American policy towards Ukraine, writes the Telegraph. Are Kislyak, for example, and Marco Rubio really that people that can influential on Trump? Who or what, Yuri, how do you think, is shaping his views on the Russian-Ukraine war now, or it's only makes by himself?
Well, we know who really has impact.
Putin.
It's the Saint Melania. Because, she is the one when in the darkness of the night, she comes to him, Mother Melania, and whispers to him, Russia is still bombing Kiev, because nobody else will tell him. Director of National Intelligence won't tell him anything about it. So the director of CIA won't tell him anything about it, and on and on and on. Only Saint Melania. So maybe she said, I like that Zelensky guy. He looks kind of cute, and not central casting, but he does well for himself. And I think that Donald Trump is to be a little bit serious for a little bit of time. I think this goes back to our conversation about the importance of allies. United States keeps thinking that we can do everything by ourselves, but we keep seeing that in the end we really don't want to. And that's how having allies works, is that often enough they do things for you that you don't want to do. And in this instance, losing allies would not be beneficial to the United States in the end, and even Donald Trump understands it. And he understands that he's not going to have his nice little racket from Europe if he leaves NATO, if he's going to behave in a way that is viewed as, his allies are already going to turn away from him. It's just a matter of time. And he would like to perhaps slow down this process so he could control it. But I think that in the end, it's things he can control, things he can't control. He can announce that he will recognize Crimea. He can now make all sorts of pronouncements, but in the end, he can't seem to make Vladimir Putin stop the war. And I think that's what it's all about. This is another failing of Donald Trump, because his base and people, that even though people kind of feel like there's other things that he was very wrong about and lied about, it is brought up pretty regularly that he said that he will end the war in Ukraine, and he has absolutely failed to do so. His success in conquering Ukraine has been about equal to Vladimir Putin's, neither one of whom seems to have been able to get Ukraine to do its bidding. Ukraine seems like it's this little poor, weak country, but neither Trump nor Putin seem to be able to bend it to its will. So I think that we see a lot of interesting developments that were not predicted when Donald Trump thought that, of course, everything was going to go this way or that way or other way. And then reality hits them in the face. It's like Mike Tyson used to say, that everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yuri, thank you very much. Thank you for our dialogue, for this conversation, for your time and opinion. See you next week. Take care.
Thank you, and take care.
Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. And my name is Irina Uzlova. Guys, see you later.